Hi guys, it's Julia Papworth with Win Daily's Waiver Wire wins for week 8 of the fantasy football season. We are halfway through it all, guys. It's insane. You can find me on social media at Julia Papworth. All right, guys, let's get to it. We are going to start off with quarterback as usual. First person that I'm suggesting you look for on the waiver wire is Kyler Murray, Arizona quarterback. He is 42% rostered, and we all know he was on IR, he was on the PUP list, and Arizona finally activated him. And it looks like he's going to be ready to go. They're anticipating he might play week 10 against Atlanta. There was a lot of question marks about Arizona Cardinals in their season. And look, they're not great. Josh Dobbs has been doing a great job trying to lead them, but we've seen Kyler Murray on the sidelines. We've seen him getting into it with his teammates. It looks like a positive interaction. I'm pretty sure Kyler Murray is going to play this year. I'm pretty sure he's going to play for Arizona. I don't know what that means for next year, whether this is an audition or whatever, but Kyler runs, and running is a cheat code in fantasy football. Even if he doesn't run as much coming back from the ACL, he's definitely someone that you could pick up and have on your team, and he could win your championship. Next person, never thought I'd say this, Desmond Ridder, 14% rostered. Some of these guys coming up, these are really good people to look at in a 2-quarterback league. Maybe you're looking ahead for bye weeks. Next week, we don't have any teams on a bye, but there are definitely more bye weeks coming up. Ritter's been actually okay. Now that Atlanta's Arthur Smith has let them pass a little bit more, he went 19 for 25 with 250 yards. He had 38 yards rushing with 1 touchdown. Again, I don't love Desmond Ridder. I don't love that as a start, but we're in the point in the fantasy season where you got to do what you got to do. If you need a quarterback and there's no one out there, he's available. The next person, talking about people who are available, Gardner Minshew, Indianapolis Colts. He is only 8% rostered. He went 15 for 23, 305 yards, 2 touchdowns, and he ran for 29 yards with 2 rushing touchdowns. I think I like Minshew a little bit more than Ridder, and it's kind of interesting that he's not as rostered. Now that they've fully transitioned from Anthony Richardson for this year, Richardson had that season-ending surgery, they are more pass-happy, they are moving the ball, and it's clear that they actually stand a chance of winning that division. So I think Minshew will continue to pass. I think he's a decent quarterback. If you've lost someone, if you have buys, take a look at him. They play New Orleans next week. In an absolute pinch, if you are in a 2-quarterback league and you are really stuck, you've lost some people to injury, you could look at Tyson Bagent. He is the backup quarterback for the Chicago Bears. He is only 4% rostered. He did okay. He won the game. He managed the game really well for the Bears. He went 21 for 29. He only threw for 162 yards. He had a touchdown and he had 24 yards rushing. Do not expect a lot from Tyson Bagent if you pick him up and have to play him in a 2-quarterback league. But if we see another week of him managing the game well, especially with Fields out, you could hold on to him. Maybe you'll get a couple weeks out of him. He is not going to take over under center for the Bears. Justin Fields will be back. Trust me. Deonta Foreman did what Deonta Foreman does best. He comes into a team and that is riddled by injuries and has a great game. He's 64% rostered, played for the Bears, and he played 33 snaps. He did really pretty good. He did have an injury late in the game in the 4th quarter and he walked off the field, but if you had him on your team, you probably won the week. Roschon Johnson is probably going to be back next week. He was dealing with a concussion protocol. And at a point, Khalil Herbert will return. So Foreman's status is going to kind of be up in the air. But I think with how good he's been, it's probably earned him a spot. Keep an eye out with Roschon Johnson and the concussion issues. I think Foreman's at least a start when it's just him and Johnson out there. Cleveland Browns, Kareem Hunt. He is 64% rostered. He had a very interesting game. He had 10 carries, 31 yards, 2 touchdowns, and he had a target. He was averaging 3.1 yards a carry, and he had the goal line work, and it led to 2 short touchdowns. And Jerome Ford was out there. Jerome Ford had a decent game as well. Hunt was questionable coming into the game, so we kind of didn't know if he was going to play, and it was a really good matchup for Ford. But he ended up being okay. Hunt came in. It was a larger role this week than it's been before, and you want to keep your eyes on that because if Ford is out, he left with an injury later in the game. If Ford is out for any amount of time, Kareem Hunt will probably be the guy. They're probably going to use a little Pierre Strong in there. Cleveland likes to use two backs, but it would be predominantly Kareem Hunt moving forward. Roschon Johnson, 50% rostered, like I was talking about Deonta Foreman. Johnson should return this week from a concussion. He needs to be rostered. Again, for the millionth time, Tajay Spears, Tennessee Titans running back. He's only 41% rostered still. They were on a bye this week, but is the team moving forward from Derrick Henry? The trade deadline is coming up very shortly, and we should hear very soon if that is going to be a thing. If Henry is moved from Tennessee, Spears is your guy. He is going to be an RB1, and he is going to get all the carries. They play Atlanta next week, so keep an eye on there. Justice Hill, Baltimore Ravens running back, 41% rostered. He wasn't the number one guy this week. It was definitely the Gus Edwards show, but he had 4 carries for 46 yards, and he had a target, and they play Arizona next week. The running back situation in Los Angeles for the Rams was a little weird leading all the way up to the announcement of the starters. We kind of didn't know who it was going to be, whether it was going to be the rookie, whether it was going to be Darrell Henderson, Royce Freeman. When they announced the starters, they announced Darrell Henderson. He is 24% rostered. And then Royce Freeman also had a lot of work. He's 29% rostered. Henderson had 18 carries for 61 yards and a touchdown, and Freeman had 12 carries for 66 yards. They also used Henderson with a little bit in the passing game. He had 2 targets for 5 yards. He caught one of those. It's hard to tell. Kyren Williams is on IR, so you might be playing a little bit of a guessing game moving forward which of the Rams running backs is the one to own. I think it's going to be Henderson, but I wouldn't fault you for putting in a waiver claim for Royce Freeman as well. They're going to continue to use both of those guys, and they play at Dallas next week. Not the best matchup, but you have a couple more weeks without Kyren Williams. And a final running back, Amari DeMarcado, Arizona Cardinals. He's only 15% rostered. If you didn't run to go pick him up a couple weeks ago, go check him out now. It was clear that he is the guy in Arizona right now, at least when James Conner is out. He had 13 carries for 58 yards, and he had 5 targets for 17 yards. Look, the Cardinals are not great, like we were talking about before. Kyler might come back. They also don't have great matchups in the next couple of games. They play Baltimore and Cleveland. But if you're just going to get the volume, if he's going to be your number one guy, then he's worth a look to pick up, especially when he's that low rostered. First up, JSN, Jackson Smith and Jigba. Seattle Seahawks, he is rostered in 59% of the leagues. We were all kind of waiting for JSN's breakout game. He got pretty close to it this week. A lot of that came because DK Metcalf was out with an injury. JSN went 4 for 7. He had 63 yards, and he had a touchdown. It was really his chance to step up, and it was nice that he did. Hopefully that means that next week or the week after, whenever, with DK back, maybe Geno Smith will start to look for him a little bit more. Another rookie, Rashee Rice, Kansas City Chiefs, 58% rostered. He caught 5 passes out of his 6 targets for 60 yards and a touchdown. We were talking about him last week. It's kind of clear that he has become Patrick Mahomes' number 2 target behind Travis Kelce. Kelce will always be number 1. But it's nice to see Mahomes actually looking for someone else. And they play at Denver next week, so that could be a chance for Rice to score again. Josh Downs, Indianapolis Colts wide receiver. He is only 36% rostered. We're really killing it with the rookies today. He had 5 receptions for 125 yards, 1 touchdown, and he ran the 3rd most routes with 25. This is the 3rd straight game for Downs with at least 13 PPR points. And he, too, is becoming the second read for a quarterback for Gardner Minshew. Minshew is going to continue to go to Michael Pittman, but it seems like Downs is earning his trust. And again, like we said before, Indianapolis has now transitioned to a more pass-heavy offense. So Downs is somebody that you no longer kind of need to keep on your bench. I'm starting him at least as a flex. And in these weeks where there's some buys coming up, he could be a wide receiver 2 for you. And they play New Orleans next week. Kendrick Bourne, New England Patriots, 26% rostered. He had 6 receptions for 63 yards, and he had a touchdown. He was really good for a Patriots team that all of a sudden seemed to figure it out and get Bill Belichick his 300th win. Kind of interesting. My questions sort of don't lie with Kendrick Bourne, who does have some talent. They lie a little bit more with Mac Jones. And if we're going to see Jones go back to what he was before, or if he's going to stay what we saw this week. Juju Smith-Schuster was also out, and he should return next week. So you kind of need to keep an eye on the distribution of targets there. I still think Kendrick Bourne is worth a pickup. You might not want to start him right away, though. Kind of put him on your bench and hold on to him. Someone else that you should keep your eye on as well is rookie Jalen Hyatt, New York Giants. He's only 5% rostered. He caught 2 passes in this game from Tyrod Taylor. He caught one for 42 yards and another for 33. He was targeted 5 times. Second most targets on the team. He ran 4 routes. He was the second most behind. He ran the 4th most routes, second most behind Slayton and Waller. He is better with Tyrod Taylor. That is it. That is period, end of sentence. The problem is Daniel Jones is going to come back. I have a hard time believing the Giants are not going to start their franchise quarterback, Jones, when he is ready to come back. But pick up Hyatt, put him on the bench, stash him, especially if you have a big bench. He has some talent. Dalton Kincaid, Buffalo tight end. He's 42% rostered. He played 43 snaps. He had 29 routes, and he led the Bills in receptions and receiving yards. He was 8 for 8, 75 yards, and the Bills went hard after Dalton Kincaid in the draft for a reason, and it's nice to see them actually starting to utilize him. He missed last week because of a concussion, so that's maybe why his ownership dropped down a little bit, but he's someone that needs to be picked up in a high-powered offense. They play Tampa Bay this week. Michael Mayer, Vegas tight end. A bunch of people went and tried to pick him up last week. He's only 28% rostered, so he's still available. Ran 25 routes. He caught 2 passes. It was only 13 yards. He didn't have as good a stat line as he did last week, but it was a blowout, so that's kind of what you have to give credit to there. He played 81% of the offensive snaps last week, so they're working him into the offense. He's someone to take a look at. Cade Otton in a pinch. Tampa Bay Bucks. He's only 2% rostered. Ran 37 routes, 5 for 6, 43 yards. I don't love him. I don't love the Buffalo matchup next week, but he's running routes. He's getting targets. Sometimes that's all you need in a tight end. To close with all you need in a tight end, Taysom Hill, New Orleans Saints. He's only 9% rostered. And, our gadget guy, ultimate gadget player in the NFL. He caught 4 passes. He had 5 targets. He caught him for 50 yards, and he had 5 rushes for 18 yards and a touchdown. Last week, we finally started to see the Saints utilize him in the passing game. For a while, we'd only really seen Hill in a couple gadget passes, right? Maybe some rushing yards, and they never really used him as a pass catcher. And it's kind of nice to see that starting to happen. Like I said, it's hard out there for a tight end. You could have a massive ceiling with Hill. You could also have a very low floor. But if you need someone, especially during bye weeks, Hill deserves to be looked at that low of a roster percentage. All right, guys, that is it for me. Good luck on the waiver wire. This was Waiver Wire Wins for Win Daily. Once again, you can find me on social media. I am at Julia Pat.